Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my latest video here, which, if you are watching this on the day I posted it, believe it or not, this was not really planned for today, which is Friday the 13th. It is actually just a happy coincidence that this video is about what I consider to be like my complicated opinion or history of the Friday the 13th films. Just so happened that things lined up to actually post this on Friday the 13th. But anyways, now I've covered these films in the past, years ago. You could find them on my channel, or I might try to link to one of them, at the end of this video, but they are always worth revisiting. Whenever this franchise comes up, inevitably somebody wants to ask which one is my favorite film in the entire franchise. And it's complicated. Certain entries kind of stick out for one reason or another. Certain ones I enjoy, while others not as much. And when it comes to Jason himself, that's another beast entirely, as there were several actors who played Jason over the years. But for you newcomers, quick description of the series if somehow you never watched these films, which is fair. You know, there are a lot of different movies and franchises out there. Some of them people just aren't as familiar with. I mean, I'd never watched the first Halloween movie until the early 2000s. It was the first time that I'd seen it all the way through. And until a few years back, I'd only seen the original, the Rob Zombie remake, and the 2018 Blumhouse film, which many may find strange, that basically an entire franchise had just kind of like passed me by. But basically, the basic gist of this series, of course, is that it's about a kid who drowns at a summer camp while the camp counselors are off getting a little bit of that "How's your father" for their respective undercarriages. Years later, when the camp is reopening, camp counselors start getting killed off. Jason, the kid who had drowned, is wreaking havoc throughout most of this series. Every time you think he's dead, he finds a way to return over and over again, whether he's gotten away at the end of the film or somehow comes back to life, even getting to the point where in part 10 we even get to have a film where he's in space. Now there is, of course, a lot to, a lot more to this franchise than that, but I will say that if you haven't seen it, you should at least check out the first four before watching the rest of this video, as there will definitely be some spoilers here. And if you're new to it, I wouldn't want to spoil anything. You know, those first four, there's a lot to love there. It's very, self-contained. It's a really good franchise in general, but those first four, I think, are definitely the ones to check out first. And if you really enjoy them, then there's a lot of other entries after that. Not that some of the ones after that are bad, just some I thought were just okay, while some, I always come back to frequently. But anyways, now that quick little spoiler warning is out of the way, I'm not even going to put up my usual banner because, the whole video is pretty much a spoiler. But when I first saw Friday the 13th, I was fortunate enough to watch the first film first. I actually heard recently on an episode of The Movie Crypt with filmmaker Adam Green stating that the first one he had seen was actually part 2. Really enjoyed it, and then had to track down where part 1 was. And I'm sure that many have kind of started this the same way, that maybe they got into part 3 the first time, or maybe part 6 when it's really popular on cable. But I was lucky that I was able to start with part 1 without really having any expectation of Jason or the hockey mask or anything. It was a great way to begin, especially since I was too young to have seen it in the theaters, and I believe that parts 2 and 3 were already out at the time that I was watching part 1. I wasn't frightened of the kills at the time, or the mystery around who's doing the killings or anything about the special effects. I just enjoyed it, but when Mrs. Voorhees came out, that's the thing that gave me some nightmares. Not along the lines of her coming to kill me. I mean, after all, I'm not a camp counselor, I was just a kid at the time. But I was having these nightmares about if something had happened to me, if my mother would lose her mind like Mrs. Voorhees did. That's what frightened me the most. What would become of my mother if I died in a similar situation? Weird, but, I was a kid. So part 1 will always be that original first introduction to the series, so it is definitely in my top because of that. Similar to Elm Street or other franchises that are even non-horror, that special, association of that first introduction to the series, and that world of those characters. But now the next one in the installments that really stick out, which I just rewatched recently, is part 4, final chapter. For a few reasons. First, being it is the beginning of what I call the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, where we get to follow a kid originally played by Corey Feldman who survives, later is in what at the time was referred to as a funny farm back in the day, dealing with major PTSD in part 5, and then surviving again and concluding his journey in part 6. But before we get to part 6, part 4 has a lot to love in this one. Most importantly, Crispin Glover. Okay, that dead fuck. Not not entirely, but he definitely is a standout performance in that. His character and that just silly dance of his really does stick out, and it's very strange and memorable. But by this point in the franchise, we have this Rob character trying to like track Jason in a way, trying to get to him like a hunter in some ways, even stating that he's hunting bear in the area. Ultimately, he also meets a very gruesome death as we hear him struggling and screaming more than any other kill that I remember from parts 1 through 3. It really sticks out. But Jason is kind of part legend in a way in this area, and part real is that he existed and he was killed, but when the body goes missing, it seems like Rob is one of those who truly believes that he just wasn't dead in the first place and he wants to track him down. So he's out, he's known. We aren't even at the camp in this one, but more of like the surrounding area. So we step away from the camp, people already know about him, and ultimately what really makes this one stick out is the, Jarvis taking Jason out, officially killing him. That very questionable scene of shaving his head and dressing as a little kid as summer camp to distract him while he's attacking his sister, and going all out with that machete when he sees that he survived the initial machete attack. Just losing his shit on him. Obviously, he's going to be scarred for life, and hands down, he's killed Jason. Dead, dead, dead. He is gone. The boogeyman who got away in parts 1, 2, and 3 is officially taken out and dead, and they could have ended it right there. Another thing to just point out is that this film was also directed by Joseph Zito, who also brought us The Prowler, which I highly recommend, and we'll link to my video about that at the end of this one, so be sure to stick around for that. But, I really do love the finality of Part 4, that this could have been the end, and honestly, it makes sense if they left it like that. You get a nice 4-film arc, and everything's wrapped up. But then years later, after they'd done Part 5, cable TV kind of blew up in my area with Part 6 playing all the time. This is the next one that's high on my list. Not that I didn't like Part 5, but Part 6 is the one that really sticks out, because this is where Jason kind of goes zombie in a way. Completely unrealistic, lightning strike, reanimation stuff. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief previously that Jason had survived in Part 1, and he grew up kind of feral in the woods, mutating or something, surviving attacks and somehow continuing to live in those woods. But this one really swung for the fences, having this lightning strike, reanimation where he's almost like a zombie in a way, but really turned into what felt like more of an unstoppable killing machine. The last bit of humanity within him just gone. Zombie Jason, who is also just a lot stronger in this one. It was on cable so much for years that this was the one that I was most familiar with back in the day, which makes it the most nostalgic for me. Anytime I watch it, even to this day, it takes me back. I've even met the Jason from this film, C.J. Graham, on 2 occasions, 7 years apart. Super nice guy, very funny too. I have a little hockey mask here that is signed by him. But one anecdote, which I believe I mentioned in some other video within this past year, was when I met him for the second time, 2 things happened. First, I told him that there are things about the Friday the 13th franchise that I enjoy more than Elm Street. Notably that Jason never rapped like Freddy did at the end credits of Part 4, where Freddy was becoming more of the star of the franchise and like a comedic hero of sorts. Then CJ said, well, there's some things that people don't know about Jason, and one of those is, and he rapped several verses of Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. Sadly, I didn't get any footage of this. I had my phone in my pocket. He said he actually intentionally waited for me to put my phone away so there could be no proof of it, and he'd just gotten back to his table, so I was the only one in line at the time. Nobody else saw it, but I swear it happened. Really silly stuff. But second was, he was really nice when he mentioned that I showed him a picture of him and my son from 7 years earlier, and he insisted on having him come by to kind of do a new version of that picture, updated for the times. But it's kind of complicated because even though Part 6 is really like the most nostalgic for me, he isn't necessarily my favorite Jason. Kane Hodder is. Kane Hodder, whether playing Jason or Victor Crowley, who I actually think of him more as Victor Crowley now, somehow he can act through that mask by emoting with like his torso. Like he acts from the waist up, emoting with his shoulders and neck movements in lieu of a face. Taking on this role in parts 7, 8, 9, and 10, he is hands down my favorite Jason. His stunt work, along with how he uses his body to come across, not just like you're able to tell what Jason is focused on, what he's kind of thinking about or planning or adjusting for and so on, but he's also very imposing as hell. Even meeting him in person, he is simply this brick wall. Well, I mean a brick wall kind of mixed with a big teddy bear, as like most actors I've met who have done really good jobs at playing very imposing antagonists. He also is super nice, easily switching from acting menacing for a picture and then back to being this very approachable, kind, and fun guy. Now, I'm not that much of a fan of Part 7. I would say outside of not getting enough Jason in Part 9 and the pacing, in my opinion, in Part 10 kind of being a little bit off, 7 is definitely the bottom of the films for me. I don't know, the only reason why I rewatch it is just to see Kane in his first appearance as Jason simply owning that role. So if you've stuck around for this long, you may be asking, but which is your favorite film? Well, I told you it's complicated. I have to break this down into a couple different pieces. Part 1 is my most respected, the one that I hold in the highest regard as it started everything out. I love returning to it, especially since for newcomers expecting Jason, it throws them off when Mrs. Voorhees shows up. And that connection I made as a kid to the fears about what would happen to my mother if something happened to me, it really stuck with me all these years. Part 4, though, is probably my favorite of the films in general. The start of the, Jarvis stuff, Jason getting taken out, the whole dead fuck thing, the weird dance and all that, and it's the end of the first 4 in like a really wrapped up storyline. But Part 6 is my most nostalgic, the one that I saw on cable all the time growing up, saw it like more than any of the others back in the day. There's late nights, seeing kind of like the wrapping up of that Tommy Jarvis trilogy there and seeing Jason become a flat out zombie menace of some sorts. And then, of course, Kane Hodder, who isn't even in the top 3 of my films in this franchise, is hands down my favorite Jason. Kind of confusing, but he's the reason why I decided to even give those Hackshit films a try. I remember seeing a DVD somewhere of the first Hackshit, not really being interested. Then I saw a sequel is out, and I had even less interest, because then, by the time Part 3 came out, I just thought it was some attempt at a slasher thing that only went straight to video. I wasn't familiar with it. For some reason, I was really closed off and kind of rude about not even wanting to check it out. But then when I realized that Kane Hodder was in it, I decided I should finally give it a shot one day, and I really enjoyed them quite a bit. Initially I didn't care for the 4th one as much, but upon rewatch, far from the circumstances around my first time viewing it, which involved a literal hurricane bearing down on me, I really enjoyed it a lot more. And it wasn't just Kane, those films were just love letters to horror. They got me into Holliston, got me into that Movie Crypt podcast, which I cannot recommend enough. Hit them up on Patreon and at least pay that $1 a month so you have the extended episodes with no commercials especially. But anyways, back to Friday the 13th. Part 1 is my favorite it's like my most respected of where it all started. Part 4 is my favorite film in general overall. Part 6 is my most nostalgic, and Kane is my favorite Jason. All in all, I enjoy the entire franchise, even with some like Part 7 or 5, which I didn't really mention that much before, even though it's, part of that Jarvis trilogy being just alright, or the remake, which I kind of hold completely separate, being an entry which I don't really plan on rewatching anytime soon. But including the remake of Freddy vs. Jason, we have at least 12 films, and 11 of them I will rewatch any day, with at least half of them being some top-tier slashers, which are more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out my latest video here for my complicated opinion of the Friday the 13th franchise, which at the time of this video is all over the place. Mainly paid rental, which I always find strange that it's not just up on some service somewhere. Another argument for having physical media, such as the set that I bought here years back. If this exact set isn't available, I know other sets do get produced here and there. This one has some really cool special features, including a commentary track on Part 4 with Joe Lynch and Adam Green of the Movie Crypt podcast, which is great, and like I said, so many other special features which were really awesome in that. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. Thanks for coming by. If you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already subscribed, consider subscribing. Checking out my back catalog, especially as it seems that YouTube has not been showing some of my videos to my subscribers' feeds. I've been missing videos from other channels that I subscribe to at all, so get in there and check some of that out. I've seen my views and subs plummet by over 50% from last year. I'm not sure what's going on, but anyways, thanks again for coming by and for sticking around to the end. Got some links coming up in just a moment, and I will see you in the next one.